Reduce, reuse, and reimagine. It's a more sustainable and mindful take on the three R's that we know: reduce, reuse, and recycle. It's a way of thinking that helps us to understand our relationship with our belongings and our unhealthy habits around consuming natural resources. This thinking also leads us to be more proactive with our own lives and how to see the items we interact with every day as valuable in their own right and not just as temporary vessels. When we start to really look at the items, we begin to see the potential everything has for more than just the initial purpose that is given to them.
We live in a society that has grown very accustomed to waste, very comfortable with waste. The Industrial Revolution made manufacturing fast enough and cheap enough that people could afford to just throw away broken items in a way that we hadn't previously been able to do. We could just get a new one. Instead of letting out seams and sewing on patches, we started throwing away clothes and buying new. Some things we donate because they're items that we no longer want but are clearly still usable. But we tend to throw away a shirt that gets a hole in the armpit or a pair of pants that get tattered at the hems. When we used to shape clay pots to contain and transport items, we now put them in a plastic tub and then plan of disposing of the container when the contents are finished. Our ancestors, and by our ancestors, I mean everyone pre-industrial revolution, would look absolutely askance at the way that we interact with the items that we have and make and the resources it takes to make them. Allison gave a talk a couple of weeks ago about the value of repairing things rather than simply relying on replacements. So we don't want to spend too much time on that part of it today. We do very much recommend going and watching her talk. I believe it's up on the YouTube channel at this point. If it isn't, it will be shortly, because she made some really great points and had some really valuable things to say about it. What we want to talk about today is how we can change our perspectives on and actions around things that are already expected to be trash. What I mean by things expected to be trash is things that are considered temporary and presented as serving a single-use purpose, the one-off items. When we buy a bag of chips, we tend to think that the thing we are buying is the chips in the bag. I'll buy this bag of chips, I'll eat the chips, we're good. It's maybe made slightly more expensive because of the materials and labor that go into the bag existing, but that's all part of the cost that we have to pay to have this convenient bag of chips. What we're actually buying is a bag containing chips. We know that the food stuff is going to be transient. It's there, you eat it, it's gone. The bag itself is what's the word I'm looking for? The purchased substance that will remain. And we tend to ignore that because if what we are focused on is the transient part of the consumable part, thank you, that's the word. If we're thinking about the consumables, we lose track of the fact that our consumables come wrapped in largely non-renewable resources. If we eat the chips and then toss the bag, it goes off to a waste processing plant and then it uses somewhere else and we don't really think about it again. All right, well, that's not the part that is my part. My part was paying for the chips and eating the chips, so I'm done. And we do similar things with plastic containers on the more recyclable end. Right? We go, okay, here's a container of yogurt. You eat the yogurt, you rinse the container, you toss it in the recycling. It gets taken to some sort of waste processing plant and then something happens to it and it's out of your hands now. Except that not everything that goes to recycling is effectively recycled. Not everything that we think of as, well, this should be recyclable is readily recyclable with the mass recycling processing plants. And because we literally wash our hands of it as soon as we have rinsed or recycled or thrown something away, we set down our sense of responsibility toward that item, and we give away our agency over what that item is then used for and how it's used. And that, I think, is one of the big benefits to the reimagine and reusing side. We focused, those of us who grew up in the 90s really had drilled into us, reduce, reuse, recycle over and over. And that emphasis on, and recycling is how you will save the planet, put it in the bin at the curb. If it's in the bin at the curb, you've saved the planet, which is much better than not putting it in the bin at the curb. And it's short-sighted from what we can do and from what those things give us the resources to do. And I know you have a better idea than I do of what that actually looks like.
Yes, in recycling, there are two terms, closed loop and open loop recycling. A closed loop refers to an object being recycled back to its original material, and then that material being used to create a new object of the same type. An example of this is a tin or aluminum can being broken down into aluminum or tin and then being turned back into another can, one for one. An open loop is the process of breaking down items into more general components and then using those as fillers for new items that uses new materials plus the filler components. When you recycle a plastic bottle, it doesn't get turned into a brand new bottle of the same size or type. It will be cut up into very little parts, and some of it will be turned into something else that requires some plastic, like packing material. Closed loop generally means, or closed loop does mean, no new material is needed to make a new object of that type. So there is less waste and there's less resources to need to make it. While open loop generally does mean that new material is still used, is still sourced and then used. There is less needed to make the new object, but there's still waste from it, the parts that aren't being used from this recycled material. Reduce is a very easy concept to get your head around. Buy less, own less, have less. That's all good and dandy until you need something, either to hold other items, finish a project, or just put something into a better state. You could go out and find the object that our wonderful economy says is the right thing for the job, or you could do the second thing on the list and reuse. Reusing objects can help extend the lifespan of it, just meaning when you think it's no longer worth using, and help you save money from needing to buy another. But if you have a new need and don't have an item that you can reuse, then that's when we need to get creative. And reimagine is how we do that. Reimagining how the stuff in your space could take on a new role will help you expand how you see those items. You have a problem that needs fixing and a want for a certain object to fix it. Finding items in your space that could fill that role and sprucing those items up will both fill that need and have you more invested in each object, as well as let you personalize them and your space as you go.
We have a lot of this in our house of varying different degrees of fancy refurbishment. One of the things that we tend to have a lot of are empty food containers. And that's something that a lot of people have a lot of. Most of what ends up in our recycle bins is a box that is broken down from holding cereal, or a rinsed out milk jug, or the insert container we put food in here, because food is a constant consumable, which means we always want more of it coming in, and we're always consuming what's in it, but we're not reusing those containers. So we have lots and lots and lots of little container from something that's expected to be used for a couple weeks floating around. Here we have an empty cream cheese container. It's just a little empty tub. It also happens to be holding all of the miscellaneous craft supplies and, bits of string, literal bits of string. Like, it's a bit of string on my desk that have been floating around.
There's also different ways that if you don't just want to be reusing a container as it looks for the purpose that it was done, you also have the option.
So I'm kind of interjecting to go in order.
To
use things that have been slightly modified. This was the container from a batch of, I want to say, old-fashioned rolled oats.
Yeah.
That was a container of oats. And I needed something to hold all of my markers. But I also wanted to have a reference sheet for what colors these markers actually were, because this is not a reliable indicator. So I did color swatching on a piece of half-used printer paper, stapled it around the edge of a container, and I have been using this same container and reference sheet for 5 years? 5 years now, when it would otherwise have just gone into a recycle bin. Then there's the next level up that is make something beautiful and do something with it.
There is then very pretty and practical, and then you can like spruce up items into slightly more personalized. This is a container for various pretty nighttime and bathroom things that I painted a while ago, and it has been very handy. And it is just a large item like this, but it is sparkly and pretty, and it was a fun time actually just painting it and doing it, and it has been very handy ever since. And it's both very nicely personalized, but also very useful. And instead of going out and looking for, blue sparkly containers that are of a certain height, because I needed one of a certain height, I found one that was already in our house, made it sanitary and nicely clean, and then made it into a project that I had fun with, and then became a nice part in our existence that sits on a counter but is very fun to look at. And we didn't have to go out and spend money to get a new one, and we also saved that from potentially being reused or potentially becoming waste if it was not able to be salvaged. There are other things similarly that we have either taken and spruced up or just used as is. Same thing with this is a perfectly good container that holds stuff. It has been great. It has been doing its job. And just like that, we had a lot of ice cream containers. This is slime. I got this. Sometimes it goes far too much. Thank you. It overflows the container, so it needs an extra. This is just an ice cream container. There you go. But it has been airtight. It's worked perfectly. It worked well with the ice cream, and now it's working well holding this. This I did not need to spruce up because I wanted to see it. This object that was meant for something completely different was exactly what I needed, what I wanted, and I would have gone out to a dollar store or Amazon. I don't use Amazon, but if I did, going and looking for that object that had those qualities, that if I didn't think this was worth saving, that then maybe I would have then needed to spend more money, more objects would have been put out into the world, and the amount of time and resources it takes to make one of those, it takes a big toll both on the environment and on the people that actually go and take those resources from the earth that help process it just to get it to the plants to start the process of making the thing that you're looking for. So if you're able to reuse something that saves the people, the environment, the energy, it helps so much more than just, I didn't go spend money. And that's a big part of it.
It's not just your time and money and resources that you're preserving. And You mentioned something briefly that I think is really important, which is the joy you get in the process of repurposing things and making them your own and making them beautiful. Because, you know, this super pretty, I like this a lot, by the way. I haven't said that recently. This super pretty container, you can't tell, there's glitter in the moons and in some of the circles. Love that. You could find something like this, but you could not find exactly this. And part of that is because it's hand done. There will never be an item exactly like this one, which is a really cool concept. But also, I remember you painting this. We were sitting and like watching something or having conversations, and you were just sitting there painting a thing. And I glanced over and it was a yogurt container. And I looked away and I did something else. And I looked back over and it was a piece of art. And I went, cool. Mm-hmm. But you got to sit there having the experience of, I'm making a piece of art. People do this for fun with freshly purchased materials. And so you got to have that experience piece. Mm-hmm. And we talked a lot about containers, specifically containers, because containers are a fantastic example of something we dispose of freely and underutilize. And people almost always need things to be contained. So they're a great opportunity for this kind of reusing and reimagining of items. There are also things that are not containers. There are things that are byproducts. We had some big irregularly shaped pieces of plexiglass left over from a project. Ah, yes, thank you. I do, you can see it a little bit there, printmaking, plexiglass etching printmaking. So this piece of leftover plexiglass became the prints for art prints that I will be doing, became the plates for that. When I was in high school, I had a teacher, and of course I went to a, let's not break my monitor. I went to a very alternative high school with a big emphasis on artsiness and sustainability. And I had an art teacher who went to a record shop and they had just a big bin of scratched records. They were not playable. I will not buy this record. It is scratched. Wasn't gonna be useful. And she brought them to our classroom and said, do art with these. So I have a set of paintings that I did that were the seasons. And in fact, I believe one of these is painted on the 4 seasons. Not certain, it might be the winter one that's missing that was on the 4 seasons. But those were big pieces of plastic. Records don't have a great way of repurposing them in traditional senses. But taking something that can no longer be used for its intended purpose, right? You can't play music off scratched record, but that can still be used in their same physical shape to fulfill a different purpose. Those were designed for auditory enjoyment. Now they have visual enjoyment appeal, but that's still a usage. So unlike make a container pretty, it's a container, it's still a container. This was, it is a music data carrying device to, it's now a piece of wall art. But what it didn't become is trash.
And I have something similar. The plastic peel layers for screen protectors. You get a screen protector, you peel it off, you put that onto your phone or tablet or however, and then the piece of plastic that you get from that, you throw away. It is designed to be peeled off and thrown away. This is going to last a very, very long time, far longer than that phone that you got the screen protector will last, just to be placed somewhere. And that is a very sad thought, that the item that helped protect your protector for something that will break is going to be just thrown away as well. And it is planned that way. It is made intentionally for you to not think about. They don't make money if you think about things too much like that.
Say it again for the people in the back. There that is.
But the more you think about the value of each of these objects, each element in each part, the more you can see that they can be useful. I made
a little red truck.
And it's going to be hauling something eventually. But as of right now, I'm still in the early steps. This is going to be a nice wall piece. But I wanted a window. I was going to buy something to look like a window. Or I could cut up that piece, put it there, and it is now a window. And I can adjust it. I don't know if you can see, but it can go up and down however I decide, and I can adjust it and make that into something that I was already going to buy. I was already going to figure out, but I looked at the objects around me and saw that they weren't just trash. They weren't just something to protect something else. It could be so much more. The role of the item that someday I wanted to get for this project was already here with me, just not in name. Once I started taking away the initial purpose of what the object was and looked at it as it was, I could see that it was more useful as being something bigger than just this could be trash. It's disposable. And now this nice piece of art is going to have a window. I'm not going to have to buy that. It's going to go from something that protected something else to a piece of art, just like the records. And we will have slightly more intricate detail life with a feeling of less waste.
One of the things that we have a tendency to do, even when we are thinking conscientiously about our consumption and about the processes that make the things we use, is we think of the byproducts as only the leftover parts of the production process, not the leftover parts of the having. But a cardboard box that something is delivered in is, for our having of that item, a byproduct. Mm-hmm. That is a byproduct of the item going from the factory to us. And there are a lot of byproducts like that have active uses without needing to be repurposed. Can I see that thing? Yes, exactly that thing. Thank you.
Yes.
So Mackayla has one of these. And they brought this over and they went, I have this thing. It's holding some things. I don't actually know what it was, but it's useful now. And I said, oh, that's one of the little hanger clips used to fold a pair of tights over for hanging them on the peg at a store before they are sold.
And I had not remembered that, but I found this object in our space that would have been in one of the piles of go to recycling that I went, that is perfect. I didn't know what it was, but I needed something that I could wrap things around, that could come off easily, that was of that size. Right. And I did not know what the original intentional purpose, but that fit my wants and my needs so well that it doesn't matter what it initially was. It wasn't trash. I saw it and it was not trash to me because I looked more at it than just what was this supposed to be.
With that particular item, that wouldn't be recyclable in our standard recycling system. That is something that would have had to go into the trash because it's an irregular shape and we don't really know what type of plastic it's made from for recycling, so they can't just quick sort it. And that has provably multiple, I don't know how many months it's been, I don't know how many months it will be, but the same thing that is a downside to plastic in getting rid of things, that longevity, can be really beneficial if you find an ongoing purpose for that item. We like things that aren't going to break down when we don't want them to break down. So the more we can repurpose the byproducts of our consumership, the more we can utilize that longevity as a beneficial attribute rather than a detrimental attribute. And I know you've got your specifically this piece of things that I want you to talk about because I think it's really cool.
Yeah, there's also reusing, but reimagining as you start. I do resin work and I do candle work, and I need molds to do that to make it into the shape. Those are very expensive. Those are very quite expensive. But the want to do it and the understanding that I cannot just hand mold or make those items means that I do need to have a different object. I did need to go out and find one. But reimagining what the objects were helps make the wider appeal of items. This was either an ice cube tray or little mini chocolates. I got it at a thrift store for very cheap. And this has been very dutiful in helping me make various different projects. That's not what it was made for. It definitely could have been used for ice cubes or such, but it has helped me, one, be very happy, but also to been more useful in multiple ways, because I reimagined I would never have pineapple ice cubes. As much as that sounds like a cute idea, it's cuter in other forms. And so having that being able to not just reimagine, but imagine initially as you're looking at objects instead of just what it's stated by the producer's purpose is, these objects can be so much more.
And one of the things, and part of why I wanted Mackayla to mention that, is that Mackayla does candle making. Mackayla does candle making with rescued candles. We'll go to a thrift store and buy a bag of half-burned candles and clean them and shave off any of the exposed surfaces, melt down that wax, scent it, and shape it into new candles that people can then take and burn and get joy from. I have a tendency to go buy giant kind of nondescript blankets, secondhand blankets from thrift stores, and then unravel them, get crocheted or knitted blankets, unravel them, wind up that yarn and use it for a different project going forward. So there are places where we can reuse the component parts of something as well, change things around. And I think really that's kind of the heart of this, is when we look at things in light of what do we want from this? What can we do with this? And if we look past the obvious, I want chips. Chips come in a container. This container was the container for chips. Thus, this container is done. That's a very straight line. If we go, I want chips, and also now I have this container. I want yogurt. And look, it comes with this nice free container I can use for other things. When we view the waste, things we are told to see as waste, byproducts of our desired items as potential, rather than as something to get rid of, we are both better on our wallets and the environment. And also, we have the option to enjoy more things, to have more things, and to be engaging more actively with the stuff in our space and in our world. So yeah, I think unless you want to, but I
think the one last thing is back to some of the containers. We use a lot of pills.
Oh, that sounds great.
We have a lot of pill bottles that contain various different things.
None of these are pills.
None of these are pills. But otherwise, we would have large messes. And so when we think about, when we go through something, we think now at the end, what can this be used for? When we finish the initial intended use of it, we now, with this mindset, go, how can this be used? What can we find to make this be useful. This is in our lives. How can we make this be a better thing? And how can it make our lives a better place to be?
And to be clear, we are not going off about this because this is easy or obvious. Mackayla said something just now. It's very public. We are now.
Yes.
Now we approach this way. That's because this was not how our general approach was until relatively recently. Because I am a creature of convenience. And I know that about myself. And now I go, okay, well, how can I turn that toward, all right, convenience. I want to use these things to make my life easier, rather than I want this thing that makes my life easier, and not to think about where things go from there. But I did not, prior to a few months ago, and a couple of very gentle and loving lectures from you, think about where I could reimagine and reuse the waste that I produced. I went, I'm going to buy a thing that will meet the need. The fact that I now go, hey, I have a need. What do we have that I can modify to meet that? Required a shift in my own thinking that was not particularly easy to do, but was super valuable because I have more things that I like, that are personalized, that I've enjoyed making in my life now, meeting needs, than I did previously when I would have just purchased something that would do that task for me. So I guess this is both a call to action and an opportunity to shift around your thinking relative to the stuff you have and the potential of the stuff you have, and to be conscious and delighting in what your possibilities are.
Yeah.
Thank you.